did show a lot of influence in that game number 2. We get the Tristana locked in for JDG.
We already saw the flexibility of that pick. We saw it in the bot lane, even though Scout is an incredible Tristana. Gala played it more than well enough as well. This is going to give over potentially a Maokai mid-jungle combination to the other side. Scout.
Pair it with, though.
Yeah, that's exactly. What do you pair this with? Because you could go towards something like the Azir and have the Xayah Azir double combo. I think this Xayah right here is to stop JDG locking it in themselves and having a double long-range AD carry backline. They might still on 3 revisit a long-range mid laner like the Azir we've mentioned already.
And again, going back to that game number 1, it's a pull away from Ruler, who has been so influential on a pick he knows pretty darn well, having his own World Championship skin on it. This is another pick he knows pretty darn well, and it looked real good in game number 1. They do lock in the Aphelios, so a double marksman comp coming to bear for JDG.
It is, and this time it's going to be the Tristana in that mid lane. One of the big litmus tests between these two teams is if you're going to win, it's likely that your mid lane got ahead in the early game just as a kind of a confluence of all the factors. They all come together and it's like, oh well, this mid lane is ahead. Tristana is very hard to put behind, so JDG and Knight. Knight was a bit quiet in that last game. That Tristana got a bit more bang for the buck, and at least in those auto attacks.
We got the Rell locked in for Kanavi here, so still some of that early skirmishing power, but also a lot of engage potential there for him. And it's the insta-lock, baby. It's Scout's pivotal pick in the Azir.
The logic's pretty easy to follow here from LNG. The Maokai's left open, you take that, it will protect a long-range backline. They lock in the Xayah to stop JDG getting themselves that as well. Yes, the Aphelios is a very strong AD carry in its own right, in the right position, but Xayah is very hard to get on top of. So as opposed to in Game 2 where we saw Ruler really struggling to team fight against it, when you're engaging with the Rell and jumping forwards, Gala will have that extra degree of safety. Of course, Scout on the Azir has some ability himself to play with.
Do like the targeted focus up towards 369. Not going to ban his Poppy away just yet, but going to get his Ornn out of the way. I think that has been one of his biggest picks. I mean, he's talked about it so much, about his tank gameplay here. But the Cassante is actually respected this time. He won't give it over to Zika for a 3rd time in a row.
We've seen a couple of games from the Alistar coming out of missing. There is a chance that gets banned away from the side of LNG here if they don't want to deal with like one of these really annoying gauges that you can't remove immediately. Alistar's so hard to kill when he chooses to take an aggressive stance. Would be okay to ban that way. It's still going to be the Amelia. Okay, all right, so removing one of the best AD carry buffers in the game makes a lot of sense because there are 2 of them on the side of JDG. And this is all, of course, assuming that the Rell does go into the jungle. Every chance that it can go towards support as well.
There is. It has a lot of engage down bot lane as well. I just wonder how that goes with Xayah down there. The Gnar actually sneaks his way through here into the bans, and will be JDG's final ban of game number 3.
Okay, well, Zika's played the Gnar a little bit in playoffs so far. He didn't play a huge amount of it in the regular season, but it's come up to pretty good dividends this time. So, Renekton has been largely banned in the LPL. It is a very powerful champion if you know how to play the early game with it. You can get control of that early game. And where Renekton really peaks is around the Herald fight as well, because he's already got his ultimate. No one's built up first items yet, so they can't just explode him before he gets value out of 2 or 3 empowered abilities. This, though, champion which 369 is very well known for. To the point where Zika in his own trash talk before the game says, I mean, 369 is easy, we just ban away Gragas and win.
Well, they didn't ban it.
They didn't ban it, it's locked in. 369 on his most famous and most well-played champion in a lot of people's minds.
I love that they're opting into this one. I feel like JDG, they took their welts in game number 2. They do not want to go down yet again. I think leaning to that comfort could be huge, but also 369 is literally a game changer on this pick, so love to see that opted into for him. Him and Kanavi connecting will be very important in the team fights as well, in those engage-centered moments. Now we do get missing for a 3rd time in a row on the Alistar.
3 for 3. Now you see LNG, feels like they're playing the style of composition which was kind of akin to JDG's composition in Game 1, where you have a very long-range backline of something like the Xayah and the Azir. Of course, in Game 1, it was more about the Jace being that factor in itself. And now LNG, they need to be the ones playing backline, playing defensive, and giving Scout and Gala some time to free fire.
And then we do finally get the anchor coming through here for LNG. It is the Nautilus that will be locked in. So a lot of point-and-click CC, beautiful stuff against a double marksman style composition, but that means that Hung has to be on his A game. You heard it from him earlier, the power of youth. Well, he's trying to show JDG just that. And now we have a very, again, different flavor, it feels like, coming into a game number 3.
Feels like we have some interactive lanes here as well. Renekton very strong in the early game, but for someone like that, Gragas has some flexibility in terms of builds. We might see something like the full AP, because something like the Azir, of course, doesn't have any sustain, so even something like a couple of barrels onto him midway through a team fight can really impact the way that Scout has to play out these fights, because he won't have off his HP bar if one of those big barrels hits him throughout the course of things. Pay attention to those laning phase. It can absolutely flip either way.
This could be a big things that we thought could be done in this grand finals. It was not LNG that were supposed to be here, but the third seed from hell has made their name known. The drum's alive, the energy is here, and the Gyos ring true. I get goosebumps every time I get one of those intros, just hearing and feeling the ground shake beneath this incredible crowd. Now as we get into it, we gotta take a little bit of bearings, as LNG have changed their composition a little bit. We were talking about their engaged potential, but for me, in this game particularly, it is about the connections of mid-jungle duo with Scout, Tarzan versus Kanavi and Knight.
And speaking of kind of the change between the two teams, you know, yes, the connection's very, very important, because those connections are going to be very important to make sure that the carries can actually do their jobs, particularly for the side of LNG. This is something that they've done very well across the entirety of playoffs and across summer as well. One of their big strengths has been allowing long-range backlines to do damage in the important team fights. Scout on Azir has been a champion which he has picked up an awful lot. This champion's been banned an awful lot across LPL, as opposed to Knight not really getting that champion into his wheelhouse so far.
I love that you highlight Scout, because I do want to take a little trip down memory lane. This was a guy that was literally behind one of the unkillable Demon King himself, man. This was a prodigy in the making, and it was something where he spent so much time on EDG. It's been really refreshing to see him trying to create this new legacy on LNG, much like a lot of the other players in this best of.
Well, Scout, so many MVPs across the entirety of this year, 31 picked up in individual games between spring and summer. People kind of forgot about Scout, though, a little bit after spring because of the playoffs kind of collapse from LNG as an entire team. But in this finals, already showing what he could do in that last game on the LeBlanc. Can he match that on the Azir?
See some heavy trading in the 2v2 bot side. Ignite has already been burned by Hung, but got a nice health trade onto Missing. Kanavi has bolted down to this bot side, though.
Okay, how many summoners are going to get blown here? Ignite not available for Hung, but
they got to find the engage. Gala, he has flash, he has cleanse, will preemptively burn it, but he gets headbutted and pulverized. Now Gala's locked down. Is this just going to be first blood? And it's Ruler who picks it up. He got his head chopped off in game 2, but he's alive and well here.
Missing wins the mind game. I think we're seeing why he's prioritizing this pick. He might have a 17-win games win streak on something like a Rakan, but when he has engaged champions, even in the Alistar, you change out the exact champion, same kind of playstyle. Missing makes the engages work.
The fact that Ruler is the one that gets the kill is huge on the Aphelios. We saw him be so pivotal in game number 1, but also something that we have to keep in mind is that activity from JDG just puts the pressure more so onto LNG, and Kanavi has already shown in 2 lanes this early on. He is being extremely active on the Rell.
And what a great way to shrug off that last game where Ruler couldn't play the game by immediately feeding him a kill. Missing doesn't waste the pulverize, takes a backstep, wins the mind game, gets the double knockup. Seriously well played on the Alistar.
That's so good. You can see why this guy is willing to grab this Alistar time and time again, but it is also a point of making his dreams a reality. This guy Missing started off with W. I know we talked about it earlier, but it is something where he's back in Sion. He's back where it all started for him, it feels like, and it's something that he will take a lot of pride in, finding those early engages against a pivotal bot lane like Gala and Hung. Meanwhile, Zika is going to try to put some pressure on Kanavi. Won't end up finding it. Kanavi will continue clearing.
Kanavi didn't have Smite for a brief moment there. There was a chance of a steal from Zika.
He doesn't know that. Knight might want to figure out where he can go to get some help. We get another engage on the bot side as Gala no longer having any of those summoner spells is easy pickings for JDG.
Really well played by Missing and Ruler in laning phases across the entirety of this series so far. In the last game, even though they lost, they used the Varus's strong laning phase to get the most out of things. What happened in this top side, though? We saw a flash blown by the 369. That's where it's gone. I was wondering what that ended up going from. Zika making the most of this Renekton in the top side. As much as we were just praising the Alistar and the Aphelios, that's all well and good. This Renekton is quickly becoming a problem. Zika, very good comfort champion for him.
It's going to be so crucial because that is your backline access when you're against a double marksman composition. You get a big old angry Croc back there. You know, the guns don't help that much. It's like watching Jurassic Park and them trying to kill a giant dinosaur with guns. It just doesn't work. We'll see if Zika can end up being that big monster in the end, but I do want to highlight on some of those comforts. You were talking about Zika's Renekton. We are back to Scout's tried and true in the Azir, and we heard how much influence that can have in this kind of series for him because of the comfort played towards it.
We're seeing a lot of comfort play in general, actually, from this game. Of course, the picks we just highlighted as well, but I mean, the Renekton, talked about that, and the Gragas on 369, have to see if he can find some ways into this game as well, because in game 1, he was very far behind in an individual matchup, but the Poppy had some great teamfight impact. This Gragas will need to do the same thing.
I like to see JDG continuing on that proactive trend here as they do use that priority in bot lane to get a first dragon. Will not be contested this time, but Knight needs the rocket jump. He took an extra tower shot there. Tarzan not going to follow him up just in case there was anything coming, but Kanavi, he was doing the dragon the whole time.
I think Tarzan was looking for the mind game to cancel a rocket jump potentially, but Knight holds his nerve, takes a couple of tower shots, but knows he's not under threat at that point. So JDG, they are holding dominion over the bot side of the map right now. CS lead on the Aphelios is pretty scary. Someone like the Alistar lane as well. Alistar doesn't tend to win lane that hard, but with the early kill and now the ability to kind of hold Gala and Hung off of the wave as well, JDG getting some good advantages there.
We will have Gala's flash coming up very soon, so the window to kind of prioritize onto that might be closing a little bit, give a lot more safety to LNG, might enable them to get on the map a little bit more. We do have that Rift Herald coming up in about a minute and a half. This was something that LNG put a lot of priority on in game number 2, and something that they used pretty well to try to get some of those advantages, those turrets taken out, and especially gold in the right pockets.
You have a Renekton, Herald fights are your bread and butter at this point. Very good champion of fighting around that kind of timestamp. And of course, you're against the Tristana. And if you give Herald over Tristana, especially in the mid lane, you expect lots of tower plates to fall. You've already lost one in that mid lane. So JDG, LNG, I think they both set their eyes on that objective.
See if they do bring all 5 members like we were kind of seeing in game number 1 around those Rift Herald contests. But I actually like the wave state right now for JDG down here. They are really making LNG have a little bit of trouble as Kanavi's just going to come down here to hover just in case.
I think JDG are taking issue with the fact that Gala has flash again. I think they'd really like to remove that. See that Kanavi was looking for it. Knight jumping forward.
Scout in some trouble here. He does get the reset for Knight. You got to be a little bit careful. He saved the rocket jump though, and he's going for it, but that's shifting sands in time for Scout to get out.
It's Knight. This guy almost backsteps on the Emperor's Divide. Gets an ultimate out for free. Hung towards this mid lane, potentially helping or at least deterring Knight from walking forward on that wave. Going to clear some vision out. With that trade in mid lane, though, it's going to mean that Scout is late to a potential play around the next objectives.
And we got to see, especially when we're looking at the double marksman composition for JDG, they need to really have these big item spikes for them, where LNG have a lot more flexibility in when they can attack.
Where it happens right now, LNG have a lot more HP bars because Knight didn't get to reset after that play. Scout was, of course, reset after that big play in that mid lane. Tarzan stopped to recall from Knight. Let's see what happens around here now. We can see that Knight is going to recall. Bot wave shoved into tower by Ruler, so there's going to be some resources lost, at least in that bot lane. And with LNG not starting up the Herald, JDG will have a decent crack at being able to contest that whilst also winning on the other side of the map.
Yeah, actually got the push from Scout in top lane. I like this lane assignment too, but you got to wonder, are we just going to get that big contested fight? You're already bringing up multiple members here from JDG. They will have their double marksmen here without those items.
They will do, but you're also going to have Zika with a chance to charge up that rage bar. It's already halfway up, and there are 2 different teleport wards to go towards. JDG, they might be funneling themselves into a trap.
They got missing here on the back end. He will end up burning his flash early. Does have the Hex flash available, but LNG used that to move into the Rift Herald pit.
So Zika's going to be here. He's not going to have a flank teleport, but he's teleported to that mid lane. He's going to be in the front line. JDG taking down the Herald right now.
Tarzan, Nature's Grasp out. Double marksman's there in the back line there. Who's going to get the Rift Herald? It actually goes down. It looks like, oh my goodness, it's Zika going to pop Dominus here. And it was actually LNG, I believe. No, they didn't. It was JDG that got it. JDG make it out alive, but they won't get the Rift Herald. The eye will expire.
Awkward moment from JDG. They take down the Herald. That's a win for them, I think, especially given that LNG felt like they were bringing a lot of resources to that plate. But no one ends up getting it after the end of that, so no Tristana Herald push, but no LNG pushing forward the tempo of the game either.
Such a weird moment to have as well. 369 was so close to walking over the eye as well, but just not able to do it. And it just means that LNG are willing to take these fights, right? We saw it brewing as they were bringing every member up there. And I think to see that adaptation from LNG, to see that committal is really, really interesting as this game goes on particularly.
I think particularly the lane assignments before that fight kind of changed the equation a little bit because Zika had to teleport into the play. Scout was trying to push. I think LNG were hoping that JDG would slow down the play a little bit so they can get some value from those pushes, but they couldn't quite get enough value out of it. So as it stands, we don't really have that first big objective fight of the game. It might slow things down, and that's going to tie into something which you said just before that last fight. You have a double marksman comp, you're going to want items on your AD carries. If the game's slower, it means that you get to those items before the big fights happen. And in this case, the first big fight kind of fizzled out. I think that somehow, some way, kind of favors JDG.
Buying a little bit of time, having some resources go their way maybe in the later ends of things. But I think now that we look back at the reset on the map, we have another dragon in about 15 seconds. It's something that LNG are moving very heavily around, and we get another pause.
And that lovely. So back into the sepia screen. We'll find out what issue that is.
Is that what that's called?
Sepia, that's the filter on it. That's the color, you know? Like when you see like old photographs, they're in sepia.
Oh, interesting. I learn something new every day.
Didn't expect that to be the thing you had to. I thought that was pretty common.
I didn't know what color the pause screen was.
It's like when you have like a memorial or something. You're looking historically. A lot of the time the photos are in sepia. And it's like, wow, we look back to this date.
Can you still do that with like real current photos? Make them look old.
I mean,
take a photo here.
A lot of the time it's in monochrome now. I mean, it's more in monochrome now. I suppose that's like the new aesthetic.
It's the new aesthetic. Well, it's not an aesthetic I want to see more of because it is a pause for us in a very, very tense grand finals in the LPL summer split. And it is a factor where we've had some adaptations in draft. We've had a back and forth already between JDG and LNG, and it shows that last series they played just not that long ago was actually such a key part to what we're seeing today as well.
And the 3 games we have seen in terms of, saying we've seen some draft adaptations, and that's one of the big things that we've been seeing. We've seen 3 very different games already, and these teams are good at each kind of these compositions. You can see where it doesn't feel like it's one team being bad, it's another team being better, and I love that because it shows the quality of the teams that we have in the LPL, which shouldn't have been in question at all anyway, by the way. They're very good teams, but typically from the LPL, particularly out of the 4 odd teams that you send to Worlds, I like to used to call them the Elite 4, where in Pokemon we got like the different Pokemon types, where like each of them have defined strengths and weaknesses. I think particularly with a team like JDG, and of course with LNG as we're seeing today, they're quite flexible, these 2 teams that we have in the finals. They don't just have like one string on the bow. They can't just fire one kind of ammunition. In these 3 games already, we've seen very different stuff out of these teams.
The one thing that has stayed constant is fighting around objectives. Full committals from both teams, TPs abound. We are back into it now as the stress resettles in, technical difficulties aside. This scout needing to try to find some safety in the top side, but I do want to refocus in because we were talking about the dragon before we went to the pause.
We were. JDG took the first one. LNG looking to set up around this second one. What have we got available? Pretty much everything. Flashes importantly. Circles towards this bot side. Mid lane is currently stuck in top side.
Wow, that Hex Splash actually for missing is so big. Featherstorm's already used. That's such a defensive tool. That's Gala's cleanse as well, but the Blade Caller is actually pretty big in the back there. Missing is still tanking it up with that Unbreakable. He will not go down. It is going to be a re-engage from Hung. An Emperor's Divide pushed out by the ninth Buster Shot, but it doesn't matter. The AoE combos and a double kill for Zika.
LNG are here to play underdogs. They might have been, but they are not playing like it. That's a huge victory for the team. They walk away with a neutral objective, and they're stopping JDG being able to sit pretty and wait for the items on the double marksman. They hammer them around the second dragon.
And they got 2 kills on both Zika and Scout. They were able to get the dragon. They were able to set themselves up here with even some more plates for Scout in the bottom side, and it was just a fight that seemed like JDG were caught out with their pants down.
They come straight out of a pause into high octane action. That is a fancy Hex Flash missing, getting a good sidestep. And at this point, just after this, I thought that LNG had put way too many cooldowns into the Alistar, because you can see that Ruler was putting out damage. But while all this is happening, despite the cooldowns going into Alistar, it's not like Knight and Ruler are getting damage themselves. They're basically never allowed to free hit.
Hung gets an incredible dredge line 2 times, and the fact that it's just the Emperor's Divide forward to get the damage down, an incredible fight. Not a single person from LNG goes down, and now they have the leading foot in this game 3.
JDG walked away with game 1. We thought it was a very different tone between the two teams compared to their first outing against each other. That one went to 5 games. We thought maybe with JDG running away with that first game after a few mistakes were made, it would have been lights out, but it could not be further from the truth. LNG competitive in this 3rd game, slight gold advantage, kills in the right places though. It's a crown on Azir. There aren't that many things which can pop that for free. If 369 is at the fight, of course he can with the Gragas, but until that happens, Scout gonna have that extra damage reduction and of course AP while that shield is active.
I have a love and hate relationship with the crown. We'll get into that maybe a little bit later.
Not a monarchist.
No, not right now. We do have the Gale Force, though, completed for Ruler. Also the Sunfire Cape for 369. I think these item spikes can be important as well as the Radiant Virtue, Kraken Slayer there on the other side. I want to see, though, with a little bit of a lull time here, the Rift Herald number 2 is up in about 1:20. We saw both teams full committal onto that objective last time around.
And those objective fights have been, of course, like in this kind of meta, of course, objective fights do feel like they are the game-deciding factors. Ruler, we talked about double marksman composition. You need items on those marksmen. Having gold on the Aphelios will help you reach that, of course, very, very quickly. Heading up towards 2 items already with the Cull cashed in.
I think the thing we got to witness in the last couple fights, obviously Scout's got some good hands, but the fact is that the CC we highlighted from the beginning for LNG is working so well for them. They have so many avenues for that, and we got to see a little bit of it just from Hung last time, able to lock down Ruler with the depth charge, able to get those multiple dredge lines. It is something that JDG have to be wary of going into these fights.
And the way that they deal with that normally is by missing being in a key position with the ultimate running. We see the tank Gragas coming out as well. He'll be able to buy up some space too. They need to eat cooldowns. Even in that last fight with all the cooldowns being eaten up by missing, it wasn't enough to seal that fight. They're going to need to do even more to keep those double marksmen firing.
That's the funny thing is in game number 1, we were talking so much about their compositional strength and the fact that they needed to defend Knight and Ruler, and that is ever so present here in game 3. We did get that side lane pressure, and it is a 3rd first turret for LNG here in this series.
3rd first turret, good leads in good places. The Azir and the Renekton both very, very strong from LNG. JDG, they're going to have to do some problem solving. As we see right now, 2nd Herald has spawned. What will that mean for the game? LNG, they could be spawning for a fight. Zika potentially catching out 369. We'll get a decent chunk here. Not sure if much is going to come from this, though.
He's tanky boy. Got a big barrel of juice. That's what that is. We do have that first item spike, though, coming up as well for Knight. He'll have that static shiv. We wonder if that gives a little bit more presence for JDG moving into this objective fight. So
static shiv is actually another tool to break something like that crown shield as well. It can chain through your members. That crown shield is going to be very important onto Scout, because if you manage to keep the Azir free firing, it's a lot of damage. No, it's not the highest damage build. You don't have a Leandries or a Ludens to add to your damage count on that point, but if you're alive, you can do damage.
Ooh, that was actually so clutch from Tarzan right there. He denies the engage for Mystic, but Mystic goes right back in, burning the Ignite already. TP's coming through. We aren't even fighting over the Rift Tower, we're just fighting to fight, and it is the missing, going a little bit missing here as he goes down. Scout gets the kill in the end, and it's LNG who are separating JDG as a whole. It might just be Zika trying to take down 369. He is that tanky boy, but LNG go right back to the Rift Herald.
Yeah, it's not just missing going MIA. I think it's real sensibilities of JDG. What are they doing engaging like that? You didn't have both your carries at the play. You're going into a great power spike from LNG as well. Renekton still in the height of their power. Scout was never really threatened. And now what this means is Herald is going to go down to the side of LNG. They can push the pace of the game forward. Again, it wouldn't surprise me if this leads to a Herald into mid lane to break open that turret. And this is how it all came about. You can see that JDG, they're trying to fish for something. Missing on the Alistar. He's feeling himself pretty hard here. Gets himself onto Tarzan, but look at the minimap. Teleport's coming in from Azir. Tristana's not there at the same time. You're playing a double marksman composition, but one of your marksmen's not there.
You have to have your tools. You have to have your guns if you're going to draft this style of composition. Also, Kanavi, unfortunately, not able to get the crash down over the wall. Did have to burn the flash, but it is JDG who are not one to stay down in the dirt. They will pick themselves back up and try to get back onto the map to contest for this dragon.
So LNG, they find themselves in a point of power. Their composition really starting to come online at this point. Scout is ahead of the game. It feels like LNG, they're winning the frontline battle as well. Their tanks are doing way more than the enemy team. Scout is doing damage.
Boy, that Nashor's Tooth does a lot of damage. Woo!
Turns out, attack speed on Azir really hurts them. 369 going to go onto this flank
Going for
angle.
the
He's
flank?
on a deep flank. He is behind
Oh my
vision.
God.
But how much can you do with this? There are flashes and ults available from LNG. This is still not an easy engage.
They have the Sun Disk in mid lane. They're going to get a second charge on the Rift Herald, and 369 doesn't really have an in. They might even just get a second tier tower.
I mean, 369, what are you going to do here? I mean, he's not on vision, but as soon as he walks into that sapling, he's going to get fired out. LNG, they have completely chokeholded JDG, and 369 is now behind enemy lines.
Left reeling are JDG. They don't find an in. They don't find the flank for 369, but they are looking for a 5v5. We got the push coming out from LNG in mid lane with Gala, but they're looking at this dragon number 2.
So 369 on his merry adventures doesn't find an engage at that point. He's having a bit of fun, but he's not finding himself a lot of success. At least JDG don't commit to that fight. It was almost certainly going to be a losing fight with the Sun Disk up and so many defensive tools available from the carries of LNG. Scout's going to head back towards this top side. LNG, one thing they've shown in this series is a real ability to realize that they have a free ability to push lanes across the map, and JDG, with the inability to find engages, can't punish them when they look for the wider map.
I feel like LNG are sitting here trying to bait JDG. It's like, we're not taking the dragon yet. You want to come back and see what we have to say?
I mean, it's not like JDG can take the dragon themselves. They're grouping up to get a bomb onto this bot tower. However, if they overstay, I mean, the entire team of LNG can pounce if there's a mistake made.
Oh, this is the 3v4 right now, and Zika's tanking up so much. He gets in there. Look how much the Crocodilian's doing! Nice double headbutt pulverized combo for missing, but the depth charge connects, and they have so much going for them. Kanavi's already out of the fight, but it's actually Knight that turns right back around. You got to be a little bit careful.
I mean, Scout is still pushing top lane, folks. JDG, they misread the map. Again,
way.
LNG are out macroing the team which won Spring and MSI and came in as favorites today. JDG look lost around that bot plane.
And this is a series that is so important for LNG. This is their first time in the LPL finals as an organization, and it was off the back of a devastating loss against the same team just a couple rounds ago.
So another team might have taken the dragon very quickly on the side of LNG and then just been done with it. LNG, they push in another lane, they bait in a play towards the bot side, and then they take the dragon. LNG's macro in the last couple of games has been sublime, and it has blindsided JDG.
It felt like game number 1 was like, what can you do against this JDG team? They came back in it, but LNG changed their approach. They found strength, and they're using that from game 2 to game 3.
I think the way that the body language looks on the side of JDG here is okay, Renekton's alone under turret, let's take the free kill. I don't think they realize that LNG are there on the map. As soon as everyone comes out of Fog of War, they realize the player's lost, but the mistake has been made, the damage has been done. LNG, will reiterate it, they are out macroing JDG as it stands, and that's to the tune of a 4,000 gold lead.
And now we have just about 2 item spikes for particularly everybody on LNG's side. You're still waiting for those 2 item spikes for the double marksman comp of JDG. That is something I want to highlight a little bit more. Yes, we're seeing them tank their lumps and bruises. Yes, they're just about 5,000 gold in the deficit against LNG. They have the late game promised land of a double marksman comp if they can make it there.
Now, that would be great. In any other game, when you're not against double marksman, but one of them's AP in this case as well, the Azir kind of counts, right? He's one of the highest DPS champions in the game. You talked about the Nash's Tooth, and we saw those chunks under the mid lane turret onto Ruler as well. Azir does damage. It's been a common ban in the LPL, and Scout is one of the very best players of it. LNG, they've toyed with JDG in terms of macro around the last objective they're at. They're now starting up the Baron, trying to force the play again.
They're just forcing the fights. They're taking JDG to task here. Big Magnet Storm comes in from Kanavi. That's pretty big, but look, Zika, he's going right back on a Knight. He needs to get back over there, though. He goes over with Scout, and Scout can't get the engage, though. It is actually going to be 369 caught out, missing, has the flash over the wall, and Kanavi, it gets taken out as well. That's the second time Kanavi is the first to fall, and LNG go right back to the Baron.
Go right back to it. LNG, they're using the objectives to put JDG's feet over the flames. What cooldowns do JDG have left?
They've got to do something. Ruler has to step up. He doesn't have the guns. He has the Gravitum, but he gets engaged on. Is it going to be the depth charge that's enough? He's locked down. That's the Emperor's Divine. And LNG, they destroy them again and again as Knight left out to dry. And LNG, the chillin' has arrived.
No gods, no kings, no knights, no rulers. LNG are putting JDG's carries to the sword. Around that Baron, Ruler didn't have the right weapons for the job. LNG, they have so much ability to tank the objective, they can keep threatening it, kept threatening the Baron getting finished off. And they managed to just put JDG into an awkward spot. We're going into the replay now, but really pay attention to one, Ruler not being there at the start of the fight, and when he turns up, he doesn't even have the right weapons to put out great DPS. Yes, the Graviton can be great in utility sense, but they need the DPS right now, and that's not what he's bringing. He's putting a couple of shots into Hung. That's it. The DPS advantage so far in favor of Scout and Gala.
The split factor of JDG, they just have not been able to find a cohesive movement as a whole, and it is something they're getting picked, right? Like, Missing is trying his hardest, but he just goes down at the end of the replay. That means that they're going to push down a second tier tower. They still have almost 2 minutes on the Baron buff, and LNG, they're taking so much right now from JDG.
The stakes are high, but the stakes are cooked too. Beef for dinner for LNG. They're trying to finish off in a 5v4 with the Baron buff available.
Nature's Grass comes across. They get the turret here as well. Nice little lockdowns. They actually find Kanavi again. They can't get him. They can't stop him. LNG, it's the ruler that is the only one that can find anything right now for JDG. But there is an Emperor on the other side, and Scout in his mainstay, in his pick, and it's LNG that will take that leg forward. They will completely clean ace JDG, and that's 2-1 for the 3rd seed from hell.
LNG go golden in that game as they threaten the golden road from JDG. No one expected LNG to be in this finals, and they are putting themselves into 2 match points against a team everyone expected would walk over this series.
JDG might be demons, but LNG are the ever